I spent forever arranging it.
Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for Nerds by Nerds, and today we have a special guest nerd today. We got Ben from Questing Beasts. He's kind of a aficionado on OSR and also map tutorials. You can find a bunch of those over on his YouTube channel. And today we'll be fielding your questions. It's primarily on those two topics or whatever you guys want to talk about, and we'll just see where things take us. So how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Awesome. If I was any better, it'd be twins. Yeah, we were just talking about a little bit about Gen Con, and you're saying how you can never get there because of your job, and this year is like a huge thing for OSR gaming at Gen Con. So what are you lamenting about not getting to?
Well, there's just going to be a big party. A lot of the OSR and DIY people, which are more or less the same crowd, are just going to have a giant party because most of us are on Google+, so we all know each other that way, but we don't see each other in real life. This will be our first time to really get together and discuss and play a lot of games and stuff. So, but I'm never going to go because I got to teach. Gotta teach.
Can't you like call out dead for like a week or something? Get resurrected.
Yeah. I'm sick for just these 3 days, guys. Got to go.
Yeah. Well, maybe someday, maybe it'll happen.
Yeah.
So first of all, I mean, we've talked about OSR a little bit. We've had Zach Glazer on, from Lesser Known Games, and now he's with Fraga Games, and he's done quite a bit of that stuff. But for the people that don't actually know what that means, would you mind explaining it?
Yeah. So OSR stands for Old School Renaissance or Old School Revival, or the R can mean a lot of different things. But basically, it's the style of play that harkens back to the early days of D&D. And for some people, that means playing retro clones, which means actual replicas of the old rule sets, but streamlined and made more comprehensible for modern gamers. And for some people, that means playing games in the style of the old school games, which it means very deadly at low levels. So it encourages, solving problems without violence. Getting XP for treasure, which encourages exploration, and like you don't start out a hero the way that you do in like 5th edition. The old school games is more the story of how you become a hero, and that's what really appeals to me about it. Plus, there's a big emphasis on problem solving, usually without violence. So getting into strange situations where you got to be very clever as a player and think outside the box to solve problems, which I feel like a lot of modern games don't focus on as much. They focus a lot more on the stats on your character sheet and role-playing and using that to get through problems, whereas old school games focus more on you, the player, being clever to get out of problems. And I find that really invigorating. Well,
to kind of speak to that, the old school character sheets are kind of sparse.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you can't look at your sheet and go, how am I going to fix this problem? You're going to have to make something up.
Right. Yeah. And so you see that with like the more modern games that have an OSR flavor to them. Yeah, they tend to have very minimalistic character sheets. Just don't rely on your character sheet. Don't sit there staring at all your feats, figuring out what you're going to use. Instead, step back and say, what would I do in this situation to get out of it? And then try that. And so you end up with I find that you find some really great stories come out of that sort of play, because I play that way with my 5th graders, because I run a lot of games with kids. And kids have these crazy imaginations. And when you tell them that, and you don't give them a lot of mechanical tools to play with, they come up with crazy out-of-the-box situations, or ideas to get out of these crazy situations. And it's just, it's crazy. It's wonderful to hear the things that they come up with. Things that I play with adults, and adults don't come up with it because they're just looking for their feats or whatever. And they don't think, well, what if I take this weird thing in my inventory and stick it in this hole, and that'll make the monster come running this way, and then we're going to put a trap down, it's going to get caught in the trap, and then we're going to climb on top of the monster and get out of the trap door. Weird stuff like that they're thinking of the situation like it's real, rather than that's a series of mechanics that they have to work together.
Well, I feel like kids are just in general better at imagining and doing that stuff. Life hasn't beaten them down and told them no yet.
Yeah, no, it's true. They don't know what they're not allowed to do in D&D. And so they just do whatever seems reasonable.
So one of the other things too, it seems to be, I don't know if it's prevalent in, all OSR games, but I've definitely seen it in some, is where not only do they go back to, the old school gaming, but they also go back to like the red box, which was never, like, people think that was like the first version of D&D, and it really wasn't. It was more of like a beginner's game, but in the sense that you could play an elf or a dwarf or a halfling, and that your race was your class.
Right. Yeah. So this is the one that's most popular among most OSR people. So this is the basic edition. It's the edition right before Redbox. The often just called BX for basic expert. And yeah, race as class. Dwarves were a class. Elves were a class. Most people don't play that way. I know some people still do, but even most OSR people tend to allow to mash up races and classes now, just because everyone expects it. But,
yeah, I was almost in an OSR game as far as even like rolling up a character and doing a session 0, and it just faded. And I'm so busy, it's easy for that stuff to kind of like go by me. Yeah. Like I'm like, when I'm in a game, I'm making the character right before the game nowadays.
Yeah, and OSR characters are so fast to make. You can just get a group of people together who have never played D&D, and you're like, here's some index cards. Write down your 6 stats on it, roll 3d6 in order, you're done. And then you just start playing right there. Which is makes it great for pickup games for people who have never played.
Eldritch Defender, what do you think of riddles in D&D? It's actually a great question for this topic, because in earlier versions of the game, I feel like there was a lot more puzzle solving, a lot more riddles. Even looking at the Tome of Horrors, there was never like a lot of things to fight. It was always problems to solve or not get killed by.
Yeah, that's true. Riddles are fun. The nice thing about riddles is I can never come up with them on the fly, but there's an infinite supply of them online. If you just Google, I've done that at the table. Like I have my phone out and it's like riddles for D&D, and then there's just like hundreds of them, and you can just pick one. So that can be fun. The problem with riddles is that if players get stuck, then it just stalls the game. Because some players really want to solve it right then and there, and then they'll just spend like a half hour coming up with iterations, and they're really enjoying it, but the other players aren't. So I think riddles are a good idea if the riddle isn't like the only thing you have to do to progress. Like I do enjoy dungeons. I have lots of dungeons that I like running, and having riddles in them is fine, but my dungeons are very non-linear, so you can just go in different directions and explore them. So if you find a door that, for example, you need a riddle to pass, and you just can't solve it, no big deal. We'll explore somewhere else. Maybe inspiration will strike, and then we can come back. So I find that's a good way to do it.
No, totally. Like we often speak about in our videos, the worst thing you could possibly do is only have one solution to a problem.
Yeah.
As a GM, one of the things I kind of learned to do, like I might have an idea or two for solutions, but I also just kind of leave it open to whatever they come up with. And a lot of times they'll come up with stuff better than I thought of anyway. So I'm just like, yeah, that's the way to go. That's the ticket. You got it.
Yeah, especially with riddles, because riddles, a lot of times there's a bunch of plausible answers, right? And as long as it more or less makes sense, it's usually just fine.
Someone just asked, is there more traps than monsters or more monsters than traps? If you're talking about Tomb of Horrors, there's a lot of traps.
That's pretty much 100% traps. It's like traps, lich at the very end.
Yeah. I heard you like traps. Here's some traps in your traps. And one of the things too about those old school like meat grinder games, like they would come up with like really hard ways for you to actually get to the death trap. So you're like, there's got to be something really great, on the other side of this, and it's like your death.
Yeah, I mean, people play Tomb of Horrors like going in with like a stack of index cards. They come in with like 20 characters. One dies, they just pull out the next one. You just kill all your characters off as you try and progress. I've heard of people like buying a herd of pigs and just herding the herd of pigs ahead of them through the dungeon as they're just getting massacred by all the traps, and they just sort of walk around behind them.
Yeah.
But in an old school game, that is a perfectly legitimate way to approach a dungeon.
cats are cheaper, but I guess pigs work too.
Hey, you can't tell cats where to go. Cats don't pay attention to you.
That's true. Cats do what they want to do. So, are you currently playing in any games?
I am not. I would love to. It's been a little while since I've actually been a player. I mostly GM, and like I said, I mostly GM for kids, or for like friends or family. Occasionally, I do online games for Questing Beasts. I have a Sunday Dungeon Crawl series. It's been not going for a little while, but every once in a while, I'll pull out a new dungeon, just get some of my random Facebook friends, and we'll just run through the dungeon. Michael Prescott has a great series of excellent dungeons that are all free that you can get online. So I like using his.
Oh, cool. It definitely works, and free fits in many budgets.
Yeah.
So what about running? Are you running any games then? Or right now you're just kind of like off for the summer?
I'm in between right now. During the school year, I have an after-school club where I run D&D once a week. And then during this summer, I convinced my administration to actually do a summer camp that was gaming. So I ran a bunch of large dungeons over the summer for some kids who went to a summer camp. That was really, really fun. Other than that, nothing right now. I'm sort of on a hiatus because I don't have all my 5th graders to run games for. I need to find a group. I need to find a live group is what needs to happen.
So, well, yeah, you need to do an alumni.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was, you kind of like led into where I was going to go next, and that is the after-school programs. I guess for anyone that might be interested, or for running for kids for that matter, how do you structure that? What do you find the differences for running for kids are?
Yeah. Like I said before, my recommendation is to run OSR games because they're really fast. They're very light. The rules are dead simple. You can usually teach the rules as you play. You can just tell them, do what you would do in this situation. If you need to roll, I'll tell you what to roll. They pick it up really fast. And because it emphasizes creativity and out-of-the-box thinking and stuff like that, the kids seem to enjoy it a lot more. It's also very deadly, like I said, at low levels. And you'd think that would be a downside for kids, but I have found that that is not a downside. Instead, it makes things a lot more intense because they're genuinely afraid of dying. Because if they run up and just attack the dragon will kill them instantly. They'll just be dead, and I'll just say, you're dead, make a new character. It'll take them like 10 minutes to make a character, and then I'll bring them back in again. But if they want to keep that high level, they got to stay on top of things. They got to pay attention. They got to be clever. And the characters who do survive, like I have this one girl who's never died. She's been in my game for like a year, never died once. And so she is the highest level character in the whole group. And she has earned every single one of those levels, right? Like those are her levels that she earned. Like I didn't give them to her. And as a result, she's very, very proud of what she's achieved. And that's a feeling that you don't get from a lot of other games that I really like dealing with when I'm dealing with kids.
So your after school program, is it only 5th graders, or is it open to the other kids as well?
It's 5th and 4th. A couple of 4th graders joined it as well. Actually, the girl I was talking about is a 4th grader. And yeah, because after 5th grade, they go on to middle school, so it's harder to get them back into the game again.
Well, so what kind of attendance do you get? Are young people playing role-playing games? I guess that's the question.
Yes. We get, let's see, after school program, it's about 12 kids. I have one other teacher who also can be a dungeon master. So we tend to have 2 groups running at the same time of about 6 people each, sometimes less, sometimes more. And that's been pretty standard. I mean, I would like to expand it more, but it's limited by the number of GMs we have. And right now that's 2. So I've been trying to get the kids into DMing, and 1 or 2 of them are really into it. But for the most part, they just want to be players. So I wrote my game Maze Rats to try and get them into GMing. And it's worked for a couple of them, but not everyone wants to be a GM. So you can't make people do something if they don't want to do it.
Well, that has always been the case. Like we always have way more players than we have GMs.
Yeah.
And it's always easier to find a gaming group than it is to find a GM to run for that group. It's been my experience anyway. I mean, it's a lot easier in this day and age, especially if you don't mind playing virtually. Mm-hmm. Which we have a few of those games running, and what I find is when you play virtually, you get a lot more gaming in a shorter amount of time.
Yeah, that can be true. GMs really are the limiting factor. I've heard people talk online like, why isn't RPGs like the biggest entertainment form in the country. It's like, well, it's GMs. Being a GM is hard, right? It takes a lot of creativity. It takes a very particular personality, requires a lot of hard work. You have to have improvisation skills. And there just aren't a lot of people who are like that or who enjoy that. And so that's always going to limit the size of the hobby, unfortunately. But,
yeah, like our group, we don't really do a lot of prep, but we've also been all playing the game for 20, 30 years. So
yeah.
you hit a certain point, you hit a certain threshold, and you can kind of run off the cuff a lot easier than someone just coming in.
Right.
Although that might be an illusion too. It's just, getting in there and doing it and getting practice at it. But, but it's good to see that kids are coming in and the hobby's growing. And I've never, like, when I was a kid, I'd never heard of a D&D after school program. They didn't exist.
Yeah. No, when I started the program at first, I was worried about pushback because, the whole satanic panic thing is mostly over, but there's still, elements of it around, people who just, heard about it in the 80s and then never heard about it since. And so I was worried about maybe some pushback, but in fact, it was the complete opposite. I have all these kids who are just like, yeah, I really want to play because my dad used to play and he said it was really fun. And so we have all these parents growing up having kids and then being really enthusiastic about it.
Don't you fret, Ben. The satanic panic people are still out there. I ran into one last week.
Yeah, well, the best way to talk to those people is to say, do you want to play a game? That's happened to me before. I've had people or I've had parents who are like, they weren't like satanic panic people, but they were like, what exactly is going on here? Like, my daughter came home and said that, she had her hand cut off by an orc. Like, what is going on in this club? And I said, yeah, like, if you're worried about it, come and sit in on a game. You can come and play with us. And she did. This mom came in and watched the game, and she was totally fine with it afterwards. Because you need to be able to experience what's happening. And you're like, oh, I get it. It's like an elaborate form of make-believe with numbers and dice. And then, hey, they're fine with it.
It's like video games without the electronics,
Right, yeah.
Essentially. I was at a wake, and it was someone like slightly older than me, and they asked, what do you do? I'm like, well, I'm kind of a professional nerd. I got this thing going on. We YouTube and Dungeons and Dragons, and they're like, oh, I don't really like that too much. That's a satanic thing. So I find like overly religious people that are, kind of have that view. I'm like, I'm not even interested in changing their point of view at this point.
A lot of times, like, they saw the 60 Minutes episode, 20 years ago, and that's all that they've ever heard of it, right? They just sort of came out of the blue. It percolated up through the culture, got onto mainstream TV. They heard that one thing, and then, that's it. But people can change. Like, I remember my parents originally were like, it was the same with them. They had heard about D&D. They were like, what is this? They looked it up online. They probably ran into one of these sites that was satanic panicky. And they're like, no, that doesn't sound good. And then, these days they're in my games. Like, I run games for them. So a lot of times it's just experiencing it.
Comic Book University. You want to play a game? That's how the Saw movie started.
That's not too dissimilar from a lot of OSR games. So.
Yeah. Eldritch Defender, Amatine, and I play D&D. Well, welcome, man. It's awesome.
Good. We need fresh blood.
Beamer or SRQ. My sister just texted me last week about the evil inherent in gaming. She is concerned for my soul since I also work in the industry. Well, unfortunately, your soul is lost. I'm sorry. Don't worry about it. Souls aren't real. You don't actually have one. Now, you also have a game. Is that correct?
I do. Yeah, I started writing this game because I wanted an OSR game that I could play with my kids. There are a lot of games you can choose from out there. But a lot of them, they're big rule books or that you have to pay for. A lot of them are free, but they're just kind of bulky. And kids aren't going to read through the whole thing. So I wanted a game that all the rules were just on one page. Character creation was just on one page. And then it had lots and lots and lots of tools and advice for new game masters because I wanted to try and get my kids into it. So I wrote Maze Rats, and that's what it does. One one page of rules. It's a 2d6 system. Character creation takes about 5 minutes. You can either choose stuff where you can randomize your entire character, which is very traditional, or you can, then once you have a character, you can start running the game, and it has so many tables. It has a good 84 random tables in it, and each table has 36 entries on it, and it covers things from NPCs to cities to dungeons to wildernesses, random monsters, random treasure, like every major category you would use in a D&D game. And you can either just look at it and just choose stuff if you want to improv, or you can randomly create stuff ahead of time. And so you can generate whole worlds very, very quickly.
That actually,
and it has some advice. Yeah.
That actually circles back to, I think that's kind of like feels like a big part of OSR or just games in general from 70s to 80s. And it was like tables. They were all about tables and charts.
Yep. Well, it's not so much like the, to hit charts and stuff like that. I don't think anyone really uses that anymore. Some people do. But the random tables of random events and monsters and stuff are a big part of OSR for a design purpose. Like they're there because it actually helps OSR games. Because they tend to be very freewheeling and open, having a lot of random tables to give the game master ideas on the fly is really, really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, even like OS Marches, I believe like most of those games are randomized. Like even, as they play, they're like rolling.
Yeah, random encounters. You're in this region of the world. I've created a table of the types of monsters that are in that region. You've been traveling for 1 day, roll a random encounter check. Here's what you see, right? So the game master is getting surprised right along with the players, which is something I really enjoy.
Yeah, I don't know if I could run that way. I mean, I'm sure I could be like, here's the thing, but I guess what I'm saying is I have not run that way, and it just seems like it would slow things down if you're constantly rolling.
It depends on if your tables are all there in front of you. You don't even have to roll. You can just pick things. But like when you're running true sandbox games where you have no idea where the players are going to go or what they're going to do, like you need to have tools like that. I mean, you can improv it off the top of your head. I've done that before. But when you do that enough, they can tell that you're just making stuff up. There's an advantage of using random tables where it feels like the world has more. The world feels more real because it feels like it's almost outside of the game master's hands, right? You're in this part of the world. There's a 10% chance that you will find a T-Rex, right? And I'm not going to choose when the T-Rex shows up, but you guys know that there could be a T-Rex here. So if you're just wandering around there and you run into a T-Rex, it's your fault, right? It's not my fault. I'm not dumping T-Rexes on you. You made that decision to go there. You're running that risk. So players can take that into account and judge the risks of going into different places. And that adds another level to player decision making, which I think is an advantage for that sort of game.
That totally makes sense. I was just thinking, for me personally, I'm just thinking about, well, would I get distracted by tables and rolling from doing this stuff? It just comes out, I guess, a personality thing. Someone in the chat brought up that they run that style. Oh, Jeff Van Gogh, they run that style game and they just pre-roll a lot of the stuff, so it's still random.
Sure.
But it's kind of like they know it's coming.
Yeah.
To think ahead. I don't think that fast sometimes. So I can improv off the top of my head, but I feel like taking the information from the players to the chart and then spewing it back at them would cause a delay. I would lag in real life. But that's the other thing about this hobby is knowing your strengths and your weaknesses and playing to them. Comic Book University Channel Awesome song. I'm a mother effing T-Rex is coming to mind. Guys, Arab Gaming, the new D&D adventure has zombie T-Rex, so you got them going with the zombies. And of course, we all know Cody from Taking 20 loves T-Rexes in his game. The more, the better. Yeah,
the lack of dinosaurs in D&D is a severe problem, and I'm glad that Wizards of the Coast is correcting that.
Yeah. Not only are they correcting it, it's undead and it is vomiting zombies, because that is exactly what we need more of. At Origins, the D&D room, they had a ton of awesome murals up for all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So that was pretty epic. I think I got some pictures of those. If you guys in the chat, you want to start the roll call, feel free. We'll keep chatting away. Where are you at in the world?
Me? I'm in Arizona.
Okay.
Yep. So it's a good 120 degrees outside. So I'm not even joking. A couple days ago, it was in fact 121. So you stay inside, you turn up your AC, and you just avoid the sunlight. You're just like, you're just a vampire.
Oh, that sounds lovely.
Yeah. You go outside and like, the sun is trying to kill me.
Yeah,
if I stayed out here for about 10 minutes, I could die.
Yeah, you just start melting. And I'm super white, so I hate the sun. It's not good for me. It took me working outside for like a decade to where my forearms would almost look tan, but really it was just this weathering effect. Because I really just turned brilliant shades of red.
Yeah, I grew up in Oregon, so I miss Oregon, especially during the summers here.
So we have Frigginator in the chat coming to us from Washington State. Scott Franklin is in Columbia, South Carolina. Gripply Games. I'm not sure what that is. I don't think that's a place. He might be answering something further up in the chat. Poison we have in Kuwait. Ranger Roy is in Missouri. Evil Silly Putty, Minnesota. We have Comic Book University. No, that's not a place. We got Jimmy in Ventura. We have Nave Hart Orlando in Orlando. Jeff Van Gogh, greetings from Luxembourg. We have Beamer SRQ, Washington State. I see it always jumps on me and I lose my place. See, that's why I can't do random tables while I'm actually gaming.
Sounds like there's a bunch of Washingtonians in there. The Northwest is a big place for RPGs.
We've got a few of them in there. We got Andrew in Corpus Christi, Texas. Uncle Peter's in Toronto. We got Victor in Niagara Falls. We have Jose Suarez in Tampa, Florida. Hey, Jose, what's going on, buddy? Zarif Gaming in New Mexico. And Comic Book University, currently in the Savage Lands. At Dave, maybe there this Monday too. We're playing in a Marvel Phase Rip game. We have Anachronos 0032. I don't even know how to say that. Tapia? I'm not sure where that is. Huh. We got S. Daniel in. We get people from all over the world, so it could be anywheres. And my geography sucks. But you're a teacher. You might be better than me. We have S. Daniel in the Armpit of California. Eldritch Defender, Massachusetts. We have Brian F. New York City. We have Kelly in Honolulu. We got CJ in Colorado. AJ in Washington. Andrew in Boston. Matthew in Dallas. We got Mr. Rob's Cleaning Service in Oregon. And we got CJ in Denver. So all over the place, guys. Thanks for tuning in, hanging out with me and Ben from Questing Beast. And of course, always in the description below, you can find all of his information. You can go check out his game. You can check out his YouTube channel. Highly recommend it. And as you guys already know, we are still currently panhandling the interwebs because we're going out to LA next month. It's closing in to be on GM tips for Geek and Sundry with Dean Phoenix. It's an expensive trip. And also, guys, you guys have already raised over $2,000. So thank you so much. You know, you guys are amazing. You guys are the reason why we are not going to go broke and be destitute when we go out there. We still need a little more. So if you guys could share it, if you've already given, if you can't give, please share it. And if you got a little give, every little bit helps. We do appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome. So, like I said, we got a lot going on, and it's all coming in at once. So how long have you been running the D&D after school programs?
Oh, gosh. 4 years? No, 3.5 years. 3.5 years, something like that.
Do you have any like stories that stand out, you know, from the 4 years?
Oh, gosh. There was a great one. I was playing Dungeon World with them for a little while, and I started them out on board a ship in a storm. So that seemed like a dramatic place to start. They're heading towards this island that that was going to be the actual setting. And the ship is sinking. There was like a monster attacking them, I think. The character casts a lightning bolt and misses. It hits the ship's deck. The ship is now on fire. Ship starts sinking. The captain's running around on the deck freaking out. And there's only one lifeboat. So all the kids jump into the lifeboat and start paddling away and leave the captain to die. And they're all like, yep, captain goes down with his ship. It's okay, guys. This is how it's supposed to be. They just paddle away. The captain's like, no! And slowly sinks in his ship.
Oh, my God. Well, you know, they made it work for them.
Kids are heartless, man.
Well, they can be. The kids are cruel. That saying didn't come from nowhere. Jeff Van Gogh wanted me to give you a shout out because I guess he commissioned you to do a map for him.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Actually, his West Marches game that he's playing, you are the creator of the map, apparently. So
fantastic. Yeah.
Awesome. You also have a website with your different maps on it too, right?
Yeah, I have an art station that I just put up pictures of the maps I draw, either for myself or for commissions, just because I want a place where I can keep them all. Otherwise, I just lose them.
So your maps are hand-drawn?
Yes. I mean, at some point, I feel like I should learn Photoshop and figure out how to do that. But hasn't happened yet. I mean, I don't need any special tools or training to draw with a pen on a piece of paper. So far, that's working out. But I mean, drawing with Photoshop has so many advantages, because especially since you can easily take things back and erase things and try things over again in a way that's harder to do with physical maps. So we'll see.
So do you have a particular favorite mapper out there that you follow? Anyone in particular? Like I know there's some great ones out there like Dyson's Logos.
Yeah, he's great. He's like the king of dungeon design. He does lots of dungeons. Other good ones, Any Which Way is a fantastic mapper. His stuff has this very like collaged 60s look to it. It's really hard to describe. It's very vibrant and colorful. It's fantastic. MapForge does some really, really great stuff. That's Mr. Vandal. Who else? I mean, Mike Shelley is really great. Wizards of the Coast uses him a lot for their stuff. And any other really big ones? Those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head. But there's so many good map makers out there. You just got to look around for them.
Jared Blando, I think is his last name. He's actually done a bunch of work for Wizards of the Coast, and he's got a book on Amazon about cartography for fantasy.
I think I've seen that.
Yeah. I only bring him up because Ryan actually went to school with him, my brother. So we actually kind of know him. I should try and get him on here at some point or another. We also had Priscilla Spencer on here, and she does maps for like different books. She's done work for Jim Butcher. Mm-hmm. And so that was really cool. She had like a weird story how she kind of like fell into it by just being one of like the test readers, and they're like, hey, we need something done, and there was like a misunderstanding between the publisher and Jim Butcher, and he's like, hey, can you draw a map? And she's like, maybe.
I sort of fell into this whole thing too. I was on Reddit like years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and I was in a long meeting at school. It was hours and hours long. It was some training seminar, and I had just a piece of paper lying around, and I just was slowly drawing some elaborate fantasy maps. I've done that since I was a kid. And then I just put it on Reddit. I'm like, hey, here's a map I drew. And it blew up, and people started asking, hold on a second.
Mm-hmm.
And people started asking if I would take commissions, if I could draw maps for them. And then I just sort of fell into it from there. People started asking me how I drew it. So I made a YouTube video. My first YouTube video was how I would draw a map. And then my channel kind of launched from there.
By accident. You're like,
really by accident.
I'm tired of explaining this. Let me just show you guys what I'm doing here.
Yeah. If I hadn't put that one map on Reddit, none of this would have happened.
Well, I would attribute it to that one long, boring meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Started it all.
Yeah. Boredom can be the mother of creativity.
Yes, absolutely. So how many mapping videos do you have over there? What would you recommend for someone just getting started?
Most of the map making tutorials I've done are pretty basic. I try and keep them fairly simple so that new people can start them quickly. And I mean, I don't draw super detailed features on my maps anyway. I try and keep them fairly simple. The simpler they are, usually the easier to read they are, I find. Most people like starting with my mountain making videos. I think those are the most popular. A lot of people have the most trouble drawing mountains. So I would probably recommend starting there. I have one video where I show a series of different ways to draw mountains, and then I have one that just shows how you can draw a single ridge line and turn that into a series of mountains that are all following one long ridge. That one's very popular because it looks really good, and it's fairly easy to draw.
Nice.
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking back to you know, some of the other guests, and it kind of leads me down a different line of questioning. Have you ever made any kids cry?
I don't think so. Every once in a while when their character dies, they get a bit upset. But it's usually not a big deal because making a new character is so quick and they're not like left out of the game. And eventually it's a learning experience because when they start playing the game, they assume that they're superheroes. And, you know, they're just going to attack everything that moves. They're going to jump into all of the traps because, you know, Mr. Milton wouldn't kill us. And then I do. And they quickly learn, and then they quickly learn that you have to treat the world like it's real. Once you treat the world like it's real, the game will actually be more fun. And sometimes your character has to die for you to learn that. But
I was watching one of Satine Phoenix's GM tips, and she was talking about, they did a video on running for kids, and she was talking about running from one of her friend's children, and she just thought she thought he was older than he was, for one, and so she didn't pull any punches with him, and she kept trying to like hint at like, well, what you're doing is kind of a bad idea, and he ended up what he was attempting to do ended up blowing him up and killing him, and she's like, I made him cry. I felt so bad.
No, it hasn't happened yet.
I'm like, yeah. Don't worry about it. I almost made Ted cry, and he was an adult.
Also, a thing with OSR games is that it's traditionally you don't get attached to your characters. I mean, you can love them, you can get a bit attached to them, but don't get really attached until they're a couple levels, right? At early levels, they're fragile. They may die. You have to treat them that way until you've earned enough levels that they're more secure, they have more hit points. They're probably not going to die in one hit anymore. And then they start becoming a more fully fleshed out heroic character. Yeah. Yeah,
I remember those first level wizards. You've got 4 hit points.
4 hit points.
And
1 hit point. You can get 1 hit point.
Yeah, if you roll badly, you can get 1 hit point.
Yeah.
And you had 1 spell, and then you had to resort to a quarterstaff or a dagger.
Yep.
Pretty much was it.
Yeah.
You were kind of like boned.
Yep. But I mean, if you're that sort of wizard, stay at the back of the party. You know, you're not frontline fighter. The fighters are there to protect you. You're there to stand back and smite.
I think I do prefer a little bit the modern game and a little bit more. I like the more cinematic feel, and you really can't get that with the old school gaming in the low levels, or unless it's more like Lord of the Rings cinematic where they run away from everything.
Yeah,
which is kind of where you're at. But at the same time, that's definitely where we started. It was definitely a lot of kick in the door, kill the monster. Your adventure started at the door to the dungeon. Pretty much. But granted, like that stuff's all role playing, so like that can go in any direction you want it to go. Same with the modern stuff too. Like there's all these options, and I understand how that kind of it keeps people from opening their options even more because they just look at the sheet like you said, but they don't have to play that way, And the trick is trying to get in with a group that expands beyond that and makes it more about the role playing and exploration than about the game part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the rule sets can make a bit of difference, but by and large, it's the game master, right? You can take any rule set and run it in any way that you want easily.
So, sorry, I get distracted by the chat every once in a while. They're having their own conversation about things in there going on. I also try and monitor to make sure we don't have nobody doing anything crazy over there, which we're pretty lucky with in that regards. We don't get anything too wild. So, how long have you been YouTubing now?
Let me look it up. It's been about 3 years, I think. 3.5 years. Yeah. I got into, actually, I've only been playing role-playing games for about that long, too. I started my teaching job. I've just finished my 4th year, so I started about 4 years ago. And that was the first time I really played D&D, because there was another teacher who was Andrew Armstrong from Dawnforge Cast. And he was teaching with me, and he invited me to be part of his home group. And I played, me and my wife and some other teachers played, at his house in his game for a while. And that's how I really got into D&D. I'd played like 1 or 2 games previously. Like I knew what it was, but I'd never found a group that was really into it. So I never got the experience to really play.
Oh, that's kind of cool and interesting,
Yeah.
how you got into it. So were you always into like drawing maps and well, not drawing maps per se, but drawing and doodling before you got into D&D? Were you already drawing that stuff and you're like, oh, this is the thing I've been looking for all my life?
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I had a large group of friends growing up, and we were all really nerdy. We were all into fantasy. We all read Lord of the Rings. And when I was, I don't know, 12, 13, we started creating a collaborative fantasy world. And we were all writing novels that took place in this fantasy world. And we just got printer paper and we taped it together. And I think it was like 4x3 pieces of printer paper. It was like this huge map, incredibly detailed. And we did several iterations of it where we would eventually throw it out and then we'd redraw the whole thing with like the next age on it. I did that for years. So I've been doing map making for a long time.
So that's kind of cool. So you guys are actually playing, D&D without the dice and without D&D.
Kind of. Yeah.
Before you knew about it.
It was like realm level D&D.
Nice. You also have done a few guest appearances over on DFC too, right?
Yeah, I think I have. I've promoted my Maze Rats game and just other stuff that I've done. I think when 5th edition first came out, I did a review of the basic rules before the actual handbooks came out, when they just put out the basic rules. I did a review of that, and I was one of the first people to do a detailed review of like what was different between Pathfinder and this. And that blew up really fast. That was my first big spike in my channel. And Dawnforge Cast promoted that as well. And that's really where my channel started taking off.
Cool. Yeah, because I'm thinking back, I'm like, oh, you know what? I think I actually saw you do a guest appearance over there. Because I know there was a time when he would do like spotlight YouTubers and have them, put a video up on his channel.
Mm-hmm.
Which is cool, building the community. So that's interesting though, that you're into Andrew's home game. Now he's a celebrity DM professional, so.
That's right. He's doing full-time DMing. That's crazy. I could never do that. That's so intense.
It is. When he told me how many games that he was in, I'm like, that's a little bit too much D&D for me.
Hey, if he can do that, that's amazing.
Especially for running. Well, it's a lot of work. That's kind of my thing. It's at that point, keeping straight that many games at one time.
Yeah.
It's like juggling chainsaws.
Yeah. It's only a couple people that I know of that are full-time TMs. I wonder if that's going to be a thing that's going to expand. I don't know. Is that going to become an actual job description? Because right now it's just like 3 or 4 people.
Yeah, maybe. And at different levels too, because like there's like Critical Role. You do have the guys from Roleplay doing stuff as well. Encounter Roleplay on Twitch. They put out a lot of games and a lot of streams.
Oh, sure. There's people doing live plays like constantly, but the idea of like DMing, for hire for the public is, I think, still pretty niche.
Well, there's 2 branches now, right? So there's the entertainment branch and the we need a DM branch as well. I don't know too many people that are actually doing it. It's a little controversial too, I guess, within the community. I just saw a video, like I guess it was like last week or the week before. Matt Click was talking about it a little bit. So there's different views, and I find it interesting. But I think people fail to realize a lot of times that when you talk about professional DMing, it's not so much that you can't find a game to play in. It's more of the fact that, well, there's only so many people that are gonna ever get to play with Andrew Armstrong from DFC because everyone's time is finite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, so like that's the main thing. Like, and the draw isn't hiring a DM. The draw is hiring Andrew to DM because you know he's got a huge channel with lots of followers. The same thing, like for us, Nate is considered doing that. You know, and people that are going to join that game, they're not going to join it because here's a D&D game I can pay to be in. They're going to join it because, oh, well, here's one of the Nerdarchy guys I can play with.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a crazy, weird place that the hobby's gone and how it's evolved.
Yeah, I don't really understand the hostility towards paying someone to DM. I mean, I understand that it comes from the DM has always been a volunteer role. But it's also a really hard role. And if you're willing to pay someone to do it, I mean, if someone paid me what people pay Andrew to run games, I would of course do it. I don't care. I mean, technically I run after school D&D and that money comes from the state of Arizona. So the state of Arizona is paying me to play D&D at the moment. I don't have a problem with that.
You're also a paid DM, sort of.
Yeah, kind of.
But yeah, I don't get the hostility either. I wouldn't want to do it just because I don't think it's a good business model, and I don't really. I have no problem with like the idea of doing it, but it's the same thing. Say like, you probably could tell from my fine physique right now, but I used to be a personal trainer, and the problem with that job was I could only see so many clients, right? And you can only charge so much, so you were always limited.
Yeah,
and then where I would actually get to the point where I'd make a decent income, I friggin' hated my job. You know, because I would see, you know, there would be days I would see 11, 12 people. You know, by the end of the day, you're just like, you feel punch drunk, you know, you're just like, nah, I don't want to see one more person or hand someone one more dumbbell. I'd rather take this dumbbell and drop it on my head at this point.
Yeah, no, that would be my worry too, that I would get burned out on it.
And with anything, you know, it's like, well, how many sessions would you have to run before it becomes an income where you can, you know, feed the family with it? So that is my objection. But if people are doing it and they enjoy it, who cares? It goes along with like most of my philosophies in life. Like, as long as no one's forcing anybody to do something they don't want to, who cares?
Mm-hmm.
More power to them. And you know, there's plenty of muggle jobs out there. So. Which Scott Garibay kind of like coined that phrase for us, and I love it now. It's like my greatest nemesis for doing the live chats is muggle jobs.
Yeah, I don't mind my muggle job. I like teaching, and it's nice to be able to, because teaching is a lot like DMing. There's so many parallels between the two, and that's a steady job. I get to have a lot of fun. I teach math for the most part, and then in the afternoons I get to play D&D. And then my Questing Bee stuff on the side brings in some little bit of extra money. It's fine. It's a nice balance. It's bringing in a bit of money, but it's not burning me out, which is where I want it to be.
Which is perfect. And you get the summers off.
And I get the summers off, which is amazing.
Do you usually take the summers off, or do you get a second job? I know a lot of teachers end up, you know, doing something else during the summertime. Well,
this summer I did. I ran a summer camp that was only 3 weeks, but it paid pretty well. So.
Nice. Now, next summer, D&D summer camp.
Yeah.
You could do it. I think around here, I live in New Jersey. I think in Pennsylvania they have like a nerdy or geeky summer camp, but I think it's for adults. It's not for kids, where they got like, you know, they've got all kinds of things going on. Some of the things are what you would expect at a campground, but the other things are like, you know, tabletop gaming and LARPing. You know,
I've heard of those. They're like sleepaway summer camps, but for adults.
Yes.
Like, you're not allowed to bring any electronics, and you all just like do summer camp stuff. That's kind of a crazy idea. I kind of like it. Couldn't do it here. It's too hot here. But
you would all die.
We'd all be dead. That would be the end.
No, you could totally do it. You just have to LARP Athos. It'd be Dark Sun.
Or Dark Sun. Yeah, that's right.
But you guys could absolutely do it. Where can they find your game? That is on Drive-Thru RPG?
Drive-Thru RPG. You can just either might be a link in the description, or you can just search for Maze Rats. You should be able to find it pretty easily. It just went gold. It's a gold bestseller now, so should be easy to find.
Oh, nice. Yeah, Maze Rats. So what do you got to do to get gold?
You have it's the different medals are what percentage of all of the different products on the site you are. So I think if you're in gold, you're in the top 1%, I think, or close to the top 1%. Whereas platinum, which is the very highest, is like 0.5%, the top 0.5% of sellers.
Now, what does that sell for over there? So just so people know.
It's pay what you want.
Okay. Yeah, pay what you want. I hate pay what you want.
Force you to make a decision.
No, I feel it just drags down the industry, really, to be honest with you.
I'm trying to get, I wanted all my kids to be able to access it.
Okay.
So I wanted to make sure that they could all get it for whatever they wanted. And, you know, a lot of people do pay for it. So, I mean, it's like, I think about 1/6 of the people who download it pay for it, which is actually more than I expected.
Which is, yeah, that's good. I've also heard of people going back and downloading something for free and liking it, and then they go back and actually buy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've done that.
Which is also a stand-up thing to do. But it does give you the chance to kind of preview, look at it, and go, well, this is awesome, or this is garbage. I would never pay for this, and I'm not going to. Or go back and go, yeah, this is definitely, somebody put some work into it. They deserve my hard-earned cash.
Yeah.
So, do you have anything on the horizon?
On the horizon. I'm making more OSR reviews. That's my main thing right now. I'm making occasional map making videos, but my main thing right now is I am tracking the cream of the crop, the best stuff coming out of the OSR movement. And some of it is fantastic. And I'm making reviews of those as they come out. So if you want to keep track of that stuff, that's a good thing to check out. I'll keep doing that. Probably make a couple more map making videos. I have more games I'm working on the horizon, but it's impossible to say when those will be done because I just tinker with them over months and months and months. So
do you have a favorite for OSR?
Favorite book? Oh, gosh.
Favorite thing you've reviewed. We'll start there.
Favorite thing I reviewed. That is a really hard decision. Probably up there would be this one. Maze the Blue Medusa. This thing is amazing. It's completely unique. It's a mega dungeon. It's all in full color. It has like these thick, glossy pages, and the design of the dungeon is amazing in terms of the actual information design, because the way it lays out each dungeon room and the way it shows how they connect to the other ones, it's amazing. I've never seen a book where people put that much work into making a dungeon easy to use for game masters. So that was a huge standout for me. Also, art is amazing, and the writing is all done by Patrick Stewart, who is a really great writer. You should get all of his books.
Nice. So which OSR system are you using when you play with your kids? Are you using your game, or do you use one of the other ones?
I usually use Maze Rats. Recently, I've been running something called Swords and Staves, which is another game I'm working on the side. That's a more D20 based system. So if people who played 5th edition would be able to pick it up very quickly, but it boils everything down to a very OSR level. So everything's very fast and very deadly. And I was testing that out over the summer with some of them, and I'm liking how it's turning out.
So what did you start with when you first started with the after school program?
Oh, I think I tried Dungeon World first, running it with kids. I've tried lots of games with them. The kids have been very patient, putting up with me rapidly changing different systems, trying to figure out one that worked really well with them. Dungeon World was okay. World of Dungeons is better because it's very stripped down and very fast. And then I did a bit of Into the Odd, which is a really good OSR game. Those are most of the ones that I've been using. Yeah.
And I guess so. Why Maze of Rats? What made you decide to go in that direction?
I started doing Maze Rats just because I designed it so it could be printed out as a pamphlet. So if you get the PDF from DriveThruRPG, there's a version of it called the pamphlet version, and you just print it out on your computer, you fold it over, and it's just a pamphlet. You just staple it, and you have the game physically printed out. So I wanted the kids to be able to have that and have it to carry around everywhere, and you could easily run games, you could easily improv stuff. And the rules were even lighter than most OSR games. So I wanted to get everything out of the way of kids being able to play as quickly as possible. That's basically why I wrote it. But the longest time was writing all those random tables. That took me months and months.
And so do any of the kids come back to you like after they've moved on? Since you said you're in year 4 now, and they're still playing?
Oh yeah, yeah. Some of these kids play at home, and when I ran the summer program, which was open to more kids from a wider age group, I had kids that I had played with, years before, who came back because they heard that Mr. Milton was running D&D again. So a lot of kids are still into it, which is great. And hopefully,
Nice.
even if they're not into it right now, hopefully the experience will stick with them. And then when they're teenagers or adults, that'll prompt them to get back into it again.
Yeah, you're planting those future seeds. Well, I would like to thank you for being an ambassador to the hobby, because
You're welcome.
you're doing it like, so we do it, but I feel like you're doing it in a place that's even more important, and that is the upcoming generations. Because eventually all of us freaking old guys are going to die, and with the hobby would, if we didn't have the new blood coming in. So it's super important that we have guys like you out there introducing kids to it. And, that's not the easiest thing to do either. I've talked to tons of parents that have tried doing it and have met resistance. As you being, an authority figure, but not actually their parents, I feel like it makes it a little bit easier.
You could be right about that. I hadn't thought about that.
Like one of our friends, Scott, like his method of trying to get his recommendation for getting your kids into gaming is to make it forbidden fruit. He's like, I've tried getting them all into it, and it just really hasn't stuck.
Yeah, that's a good strategy, actually. Now, you're not old enough. You're not mature enough to play this game.
Yeah, you won't understand it.
Yeah, too complicated for you.
And I can definitely see that. It took me a couple attempts to get my son into it before it finally stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just by I tried it earlier, tried exposing to him. I thought maybe they'd like to move the minis around on the board and they'd have fun with that. They kind of did, but they were definitely not into the role-playing aspects of the game.
Yeah.
It was later.
Especially when it's with kids, you do need some game that's fairly light. Because I've seen people start introducing kids to games and starting with 5th edition or even Pathfinder and stuff like that. And it takes them several hours even to make a character. And then hours after that to teach them all of the rules. And by then the kids have just checked out. You need a game where it's just like, here's your character, we're starting to play now. You're in a dungeon, there's something trying to kill you, what are you going to do? And you just jump them into that right away, and you start. And if they need to roll something, you just tell them what to roll. It has to be exciting quickly, so they get engaged.
Yeah, I feel like the reason why I was able to get him in was because I did start with D&D. He wasn't feeling it, and then we ran a superheroes game with Mutants and Masterminds, and Mutants and Mastermind is very complicated, but it's all front-loaded. It's making the characters are difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have a character, you use a D20, that's it, and it's fairly simple to play.
Yeah.
So he was able to play a purple gorilla from space, and he was sold.
Yeah.
And then later on, when we moved into D&D, he wanted to play that as well. And even there was even some resistance there because we record our games and he didn't want to be recorded. But eventually he wanted to play more than he didn't want to be recorded. So he got into the games. And I think my partner Ted and then my brother Ryan were both in those games. So that made it easier because it was him getting to hang out and play with his uncles and not just his dad.
Right.
Which brings me back to the point, you being their teacher and not a parent. I think that kind of it makes another bridge that makes it easier for them to cross.
Right.
Because especially if you're the cool teacher,
Hopefully I'm swiftly becoming the cool teacher. I say don't just run D&D. I run 3 gaming clubs a week. One is D&D, one is Mage Knight, the miniatures game, and one is a general board gaming club. So I'm just gaming all week, basically, with kids.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So if you're not the cool teacher, you're probably at least, at the very minimum, the fun teacher.
Yeah.
So you've got a bunch of cool stuff going on with that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm surprised you held that in your back pocket. That is actually that does make your job a lot more fun too. Being able to do this stuff and be like, you work during the day and beat them up with math, and then then you can have their characters get eaten by monsters at the after school.
It's great about running 3 of them is that there's a lot of crossover. So I got a huge collection of those Mage Knight miniatures, and you can use those in D&D. So in one club we'll be doing a war game with them, and the next club will be like, oh, you run into a random monster. I'll close my eyes and reach in the box of Mage Knight, and I'll pull something out. Like, this is what you run into. You can use it as a random monster generator.
Nice. You ever get like a kid you don't like, and you're like, I'm so killing your character?
No, it hasn't happened yet. They're killed by the game. They're not killed by me.
Well, there's that as well. So we are right around the hour mark, so we're going to wrap it up. Maze Rats, check it out. Check out Questing Beast. Oh, which also I said before, actually before we got started, was I love the name. I love the name. I love the King Arthur reference.
Not everyone gets that. A lot of people think it's just like this weird name, but like no, it's an actual monster.
So, well, yeah, from the Arthurian legends.
Yeah.
Which I believe that was in the first Deities and Demigods book. They had the heroes in there, and it may have been statted in there. But we're going back a ways. That is also one of my favorite covers too.
Yeah, it's a great one. I got all these books out for my 5th graders just to show them what the old D&D books look like, and this was by far the most popular one to look through because it has all the crazy gods and monsters in it.
Odin, man. It's got Odin. What more do you need? So yeah, definitely cool. Ben, thanks for coming on. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us and watching. Really appreciate it. We will be here tomorrow, same time, but we will be playing Open Legends, Other Skies, Beginning of the End. So you can tune in for that. Next week we'll be back with all the normal stuff. So until next time, guys, stay nerdy.